to our webinar entitled The 21st Century in the Classroom. Today we're speaking with Ryan von Bergheim and also Nathan Fonseca. What we're really approaching today is the journey that Ryan has taken in implementing the 21st century classroom into his school here at St Thomas. And what we're going to look at now is the fact that we're a couple of years into this model of the way the classroom has been structured. We're going to ask Ryan to be talking about the operation, how he's managed to gain the support of teachers and the students as well as the parents in the school, and then looking at the way that it's dramatically changed the way that our students are now learning in the classroom. So a little bit of background on Ryan. Ryan has been teaching in Western Australia since 2007. He's assistant principal here at St Thomas Primary School in Claremont in Western Australia. He also teaches Year 6. In Ryan's role as a key teacher, he's part of the digital learning exemplary educator for the FEDD in WA, and teaching is his passion and the job that he's been born to do. Digital learning is an interest of his and an area of expertise, and includes contemporary learning spaces and the integration of iPads into the classroom for creative purposes. Nathan Fonseca is from IT Dynamics. He's going to be assisting us with the technical input from his experience with the implementation of digital technologies in other schools. The role that Nathan has played, he's developed his IT skills whilst working in many sectors, including the mining sector, medical and within education. Being a former IT manager of WA High School, he's worked with dozens of primary schools, and Nathan has much to have done with the implementation of technologies within schools. Nathan finds it most rewarding when he sees users excited with the use of new technologies. And I think that's where the theme of today's webinar is going to be. So what we're going to look at this stage is we've seen the changes of technology in the classroom. What we're going to now look at is inviting Ryan to describe how he has incorporated the use of digital technologies and how he's transformed his classroom into the 21st century and how he's used that expertise to roll it out to the rest of the schools. So in the initial stages, Ryan, can you describe what exactly is the 21st century classroom and what is it that we would expect to see?
Sure. So I guess for us, different schools, different people have different understandings of 21st century classroom. For us, it's, a flexible learning space, moving away from that traditional classroom of everybody has their own desk, in rows, facing the front, that sort of chalk and talk style of teaching. So for us, it was about having spaces for different things within the classroom. So this classroom, for example, is just a pretty simple square, and would have been a very traditional classroom, 10 odd years ago. So now the way that it's been set up, there are different spaces for different things, different spaces for small group, independent work, a more casual sort of workspace with the couches, whiteboards, tabletops to write on, so a lot of collaboration. So we look for collaboration as a key part of a 21st century learning space. Different levels, so we've got a coffee table for the kids that like to work low.
Would you like to walk us around?
Sure, yes, I can walk you around. So we've got a few different pods. So this pod, we call them bite tables. So this pod is a great space for things like guided reading, because you can, as the three of us are sitting nice and close, you can get really nice and close in, and everybody's within a nice proximity for a small little guided reading session of anywhere between 6 to 8 kids. So we've got another pod over there. We've got this coffee table here, which is really good. It's got a glass tabletop, so the kids are often writing on that with whiteboard markers, doing any brainstorming, planning, or word games, anything like that. These little stools are good because they can be moved anywhere around the room, essentially. This table is a good one because it can be moved, depending on, we're going to talk a little bit later about the movement of the space, but that can be moved away against the wall if it needs to be an individual workspace. It can be put in a row if there are kids that need to make sure they're facing the front for certain subjects and activities, or it can be pushed back into a nice little group of 4 to 8 for us to work on. This longer table. Here's one of our, this is sort of the other half of the brains behind the operation, Leela. This table is, again, just like the pods, but in this way, again, I can have those kids, or those kids that prefer to be facing the front for part of the explicit instruction, they can be facing the front from this back row. This is, I guess, more of a pair workstation or an independent workstation, as opposed to the other ones where it's more, I guess, natural to talk in the hubs. These containers, these are called storage porters, and within there you've got each child has their own tub to store their iPad and any books and resources they have. These are really good because they're a perfect height for Year 6s, and they double as a standing up table. So often kids will be standing here while we're teaching or while they're working on their iPads, handwriting, while they're handwriting, whatever they're doing. So these are probably one of my favourite things that we've got. Kids also, depending on where this is, kids often will sit up there and work on top of these as well, which not all teachers would probably allow, but for me, if they're listening and they're really focused on their work, it doesn't bother me. The couch area is a very popular area. They're probably not the most comfortable couches, but the kids really like them. Again, that's another space where if they're working on their iPads or a laptop, they can work there. It's probably a small little space for a small chat if there's a group situation going on, 4 or 5 kids working down there. So that's a really good space. And then we've got, sorry, let's keep coming over towards you. This is a bigger just storage porter. This one we have got in quite a few of the classes, and looking back, I probably would have got more of the shorter ones because they doubled as a stand-up table. At the moment, this space is empty with a small little whiteboard, but on Monday we're getting a stand-up table, so kids that, to go along with that area over there where they can stand, the kids can stand up here, and it's in a shape which is, again, more conducive to small group discussions. So about anywhere between 5 to 8 kids can work there comfortably standing up, and that's something that this class are particularly looking forward to. And then I guess I forgot about this area up the back. There's an area up the back that used to be, it's just a bench top essentially, and in my first year in here, I didn't think about this space, and it essentially just had a lot of clutter on it. Kids were storing their work there, and it looked pretty messy. So I just went to Spotlight and grabbed some thick cushions that can be taken off if kids want to work on the floor. And this is probably one of the most popular spaces. Anytime you come into my class, you would see at least 1 or 2 kids up in this area working on their iPads or with a tray, working in their books. This is a really, really popular area. And it's also, I guess, enlarged the room, because before I had this, there weren't 6 spots for kids to work, so that was happening in this space here. So this has made the room seem a lot bigger as well for the kids and for myself as a teacher. And then if you spin around or behind you, there's just a teaching whiteboard, 2 teaching whiteboards and a TV, a big screen TV for some of the explicit teaching that we do. And then you will notice I don't have a desk, so there's 2 trolleys. If we just go here, sorry, I'm getting close. There's just 2 trolleys there, and essentially if I need to take them around with me when I'm doing some guided reading or spelling groups, I can just wheel it around with me, and I've got everything I need, because we don't have desks as teachers. And that's basically, I think, a run through of the classroom. Sorry, so to finish the question about what we look for in the 21st century classroom, the spaces where we can use ICT easily, seating, a range of seating. So I didn't highlight before that we've got these, they're called hokey stools, but I guess a lot of people just call them wobbly stools. Wobbly stools are really good because we're both sitting on them now. They're good because you can get your energy out and the nerves and all that kind of stuff. So you can focus on what you're doing in the classroom as a student, because you're getting all your energy out by wobbling on those. And we still have the traditional chairs, Nathan sitting on one with the backs, because a lot of kids do like on occasion to sit on those. Depending on what activity you're doing, you do like to sort of lean back, particularly if it's something a bit longer, and use those. So kids will sit on the floor as well, they'll lie on the floor depending on what they're doing, the little stools there. So there's quite a range of different things. So essentially, I guess a 21st century space for us was places where the kids could use ICT easily, collaborate and communicate really easily, and be creative.
Okay, thank you. So this is 2018, And your journey with this commenced back in 2012. So that really started through the concept that you were wanting to bring iPads into the classroom.
Yes.
And you were doing Year 3, I think, at that stage?
Yes.
So part of your concept there was to really look at using the iPads on a one-to-one basis on that. So that is obviously the start of where you were in that new classroom design.
Yeah.
Can you fill us in how you approached and got that actually going in the school?
Sure. So it was in my first year here. The school had just purchased, before I arrived, a class set of iPads. So I think that we purchased 15 to 30 iPads to be used, I guess, between 2 year levels. So, for example, Year 5 and 6 would share 10 iPads. So we used that for the first year that I was here, and that was really great. iPads were a fairly new thing at that stage. That was really great, but we quickly saw that there was a limitation to having a shared number of iPads. If both teachers wanted to use it at the same time, you only had 5. If kids had, say, work on one iPad and they didn't have that iPad installed that process, so it became a bit of a I don't want to say nightmare, but it became troublesome for teachers wanting to integrate ICT, but there were roadblocks getting in the way, and when teachers have roadblocks, we're probably more likely not going to use it if it becomes too hard. So myself and Leela, who's sitting sitting out the back, we spoke with the principal and we talked about going one-to-one. I believe the school was looking at earlier going one-to-one laptops, and so myself and Leela, and who was the Year 5 teacher at the time, and our ICT specialist, and the principal at the time, Tamara, we sat together and spoke about what are some of the benefits of going one-to-one iPads. We decided it was the right way to go. So from that point, we decided that we needed to approach the board, I guess, to garner their support and inform them about why we wanted to go this way. So we went to the board and presented to the board about our vision for one-to-one iPads. Within that proposal, we actually talked also about the contemporary spaces. So during that time, our principal at the time said we had a bit of money in the budget to upgrade one of the classrooms. And so initially the thought was to do the upper years, but we thought we may as well match it in with a one-to-one iPad program rollout, because the way we were teaching might be changing with that ICT, and we wanted to reflect that in the furniture that we were purchasing and the way we were structuring the room. So we presented that to the board and they were very supportive. There are a couple of questions about will the kids just be lying on the couches playing on their iPads all day, and we sort of informed them that that's not how it will work. It'll still be structured and then we'll still be doing some really intensive learning with the iPads. The board said, yeah, we're really behind that. And so for us at St. Thomas, the decision was to go one-to-one iPad, parent-funded iPad, so it wasn't a school-funded. And that was partly because we saw that long-term that would free up some money and resources to be able to be spent elsewhere, for example, robotics, those kinds of things, if the parents were able to provide an iPad for their child. So that was essentially the start of it, and then I can talk about the rollout from there if you have. So from that point in time, the next year we decided that we wanted to roll it out in one classroom. We wanted to make sure that the leadership team at the time, and with myself and Leila, we wanted to make sure we were confident with the person that was going to be running that program, given that we didn't know of any other schools at the time or who before us who had implemented this. We wanted to make sure we had someone who was fairly confident that they could run this kind of classroom with a one-to-one program in Year 3 without having any big issues, and who could do that properly. So we decided that that was going to be, I was in Year 3 at the time, so it was, I guess, lucky and it worked out nicely. So we rolled out a one-to-one program, iPads, and the space in Year 3 for the start of 2013, it must have been.
So just a quick question, in the lead up to that, do you have any discussions with the parents, like what was their feedback?
So
we sort of did some informal sort of broaching of different people, key, I guess, parents within our parent community. And we also went to visit a couple of other schools that were high schools that had sort of started this kind of process. And then we informed the parents as part of our one-to-one parent information sort of package going out to parents and information evenings where the principal and myself and Leela spoke to the group about what we were doing and why we were doing it. And I think because we packaged it together, parents were more receptive. There was still a little bit, initially there was some hesitation, but we might speak about that a bit later. There was some hesitation with some parents that we had to work through. I think cool. 2013, we rolled it out into year 3, just one classroom, and we sort of made that classroom. So we essentially went all out with that one because we thought this is going to be the prototype classroom that we want to model the rest of. So having said that, we have changed things from that time, but that was the prototype we wanted to sort of set up for our parents to view and also our staff to view as well, the staff that were in the classroom. So we set that up. That was probably a 6 to 9 month process between Leela, myself and the principal initially talking about how we were going to do it, what it was going to look like, what kind, because we didn't have any other primary schools to look at. We were, I guess, researching ourselves online about what was out there at the moment, what ideas we could come up with. And then we had gone to visit Holy Cross in Ellenbrook, which had very similar sort of style of furniture set up, which was really helpful. But it was, we had the big butcher's paper out and trying to draw a scale and print out some different things we could put in, and we were moving. So it was it wasn't a process that took us quite a bit of thought and planning.
So that would have been in 2012 that you're doing the planning.
Yes, sorry.
The implementation started
in 2013.
2013.
Yes.
So how did you actually prepare the children that were coming? Were they being advised they're coming into a radical, if we can use that term, way of approaching their teaching in the classroom?
Yeah, and I guess that one of the biggest changes for the kids was that in year 2, and traditionally at this school, and I'm sure most other schools, kids had an individual desk where they had a desk mat and the lids, and that was their own space that they worked at every day most of the time. For our kids, that was certainly the case in year 2. They had their own space, their own desk, their own little drawer that they had, and nobody sort of worked there. So I guess there was a little bit of a discussion with the twos, but it was really that the twos at the time coming in. But it was really just that following year, that first day, them seeing, because it wasn't ready until that week we went back to school, them seeing it and seeing the bright red couches and the colourful tables and the tubs that were going to be theirs, but not at a specific spot. And certainly in the first few weeks, we only had a few of the wobbly stools. I think we only bought 6 or 8 at first. Certainly the kids were very possessive of them. So when if I was working with a group and somebody wanted to come and tell me something, they picked up the chair and they carried it over to me to show me their work. So pretty quickly we realised, okay, we need to get a whole heap more of these chairs because this is something that the kids are really enjoying working on, and it's helping them work.
Did they seem to be territorial as well?
Yes, initially, mainly with the couch area. So once the explicit teaching was done, and I said, okay, it's time to go and work, there was a mad dash to the young couch. I can't remember if we had 1 or 2 couches back then. I think we had 2. So they fit 3 kids, maybe not a little year 3, so maybe 4 kids max. So there was quite a mad dash. So we had to talk about. There was a lot of talk about how we use the room. So what activities would the couch be good for? It might be, is it good for an extended writing piece? Probably not. That's probably where you consider a desk. Is it good if your group's working on an iPad in literacy? Yeah, that's probably a good space. Or you're having a group discussion? Yeah, that's probably a good space. So there was certainly a lot of, initially in the first few weeks, because it was so new to the school, there was a lot of teaching the kids how the classroom worked and what spaces were best for what activities, I guess. After about 3 or 4 weeks, they learned that. Certainly getting one of those stools helped. But they learned that it wasn't always the stool. Sometimes they wanted to sit on the chairs, the traditional chairs. So it was about a lot of it was about their choice about how they wanted to work, except for when it was teacher directed. And for guided reading, for example, it would always be at one of these pods because it just works better. The rest of the class, depending on what they're doing, can choose where they go. Yeah.
How did you find it as the teacher embarking on something new? Were you being challenged with these the tasks, or was it just a natural progression for you?
Yeah, I think it probably suits our style of teaching here at St. Thomas a lot more than the traditional, everyone has their own desk, everybody faces the front. So at St. Thomas we have our guidelines for how we teach, particularly numeracy and literacy. And at the start of those is a whole class session, explicit session, but then it's a differentiated activities where kids go off into smaller groups and they're doing different activities based on what the teacher sees that they need. So for us, I think this space helps us to do that a lot more than the traditional just clumps of desks or rows that may have been, maybe in other schools or may have been in other schools. It sort of complements what we were already doing. I guess the new part was getting used to having something like a couch in here. So I don't think it radically changed the way we were teaching, because for us, we believe good practice was that explicit teaching to the class and then small group differentiation. And I think these spaces allow that small group differentiation a lot better than the individual desks did. And also, because the kids don't have a specific desk in here, they're hotspotting, there was none of the sort of small little niggly logistics like, he was sitting at my desk and he used my pen, or my pen was there before but Tommy took it because he was sitting there. That just was eliminated. And we have shared resources now where kids don't have their own pencil cases. All the resources are stored in the middle, so if they need a pen, glue, they grab it, they use it, they put it back. I think the spaces very much complement what we're doing, our philosophy of teaching as a school.
How did you find the engagement with the kids? So compared to before you did this, compared to afterwards, so being a free teacher, we used to have one child per desk, and then now with the new space, do you find the engagement level is higher, the same, or what?
High, absolutely high. Yeah, and there are certain kids who certainly suit this style of classroom more than the traditional style. So I'm thinking of one student who was a Year 3 boy, who was a very fidgeted a lot and couldn't really sit still. So this kind of space, so in that sense, getting him to do, a decent amount of work was a bit difficult. But with this kind of space, I remember often he would have on one of these stools, he'd have his knees on there and he'd be half sort of lying across the table, but he was fully engaged. And for me, that was okay. For other teachers, I know that they would find that a bit confronting if they weren't used to it. For me, I knew if I'm getting the best work out of him because he's wobbling on this with his knees, and it was safe, it was safe, you've got to make sure they're safe. He was wobbling on it with his knees, he was getting his work done, he wasn't annoying other kids around him working, and that it was all fine. And part of the reason I felt confident to do that was because I knew that the leadership team here, if they walked in, they wouldn't bat an eyelid. It wouldn't be like, well, that kid's not working because he's kneeling on a chair swinging. I knew that I had their full support, and I think that makes a huge difference. If the principal had walked in, it probably would have been a smile on her face, thinking, okay, yeah, great, this kid's working, he's doing some great stuff. For the kids, I think their engagement certainly has been higher because I think there's a lot of spaces for them to work depending on what they're doing. So if they're doing an activity on their iPad, they can get comfortable on the couch instead of sitting on this, for an extended period of time. So for them, teaching them how to use the space, but also them having a choice about, actually, I feel like sitting on the couch today to do this activity, this is going to be where I can get my best work done. And for us, that was part of this design as well, is where can kids get their best work done, where they feel most comfortable. That's why if they're sitting up on top of those storage tubs, it doesn't bother me. They're focused, they're listening. If they're standing up while I'm talking, it doesn't bother me. In Year 3, I used to have, most teachers have the mat space at the front of the room where all the kids would sit. And I very quickly realised that doesn't suit all kids. All kids can't sit still on the mat. So I had no problems with the kids that wanted to sit on the mat in front of me, sat on the mat. And other kids could sit on the couch, which was in that particular room, was facing me, all these wobbly stools. And it meant that they were focusing on the explicit teaching that I was doing for 10, 15 minutes, as opposed to having everybody on the couch. and those kids who couldn't sit still sort of rocking and turning around and doing different things. So that certainly worked in the year 3 space. In the year 6 space, I don't have a floor space as such, but when I'm teaching, it certainly helps that kids can stand up and listen or rock on a stool or sit on the floor.
So the general behaviour of the children that you've taught both in year 3 and obviously now year 6, would you say that the experience that they have of embarking on this as a classroom style has improved their behaviour, that they're better behaved?
Yeah, I think they're probably more on task because they're more comfortable in this environment. I think this environment, maybe it doesn't look like home because there's a lot of colourful desks, but it certainly looks a lot more inviting to them than the sort of, we used to have the grey individual desks, which probably we all grew up with. It certainly looks a lot more appealing. There's no, when you lift your lid up, there's no sheets that fall on the floor with your desk mat. It just looks very sleek, it looks very clear, so that when the kids come in the morning, I think they think, okay, fresh start, it's a blank slate, let's get going. Whereas before, when you had your own desk, there was always something left on your desk, and there was always something under your desk mat, and your tub was a mess. Here, I think they walk in, they can work anywhere, so it's a fresh start. So, I think for the kids, they've found it really positive.
How do you find them looking after their devices, since they're the owner of their device?
Absolutely. In year 3, when we first rolled it out, I guess because they own the device, they were more aware of how they were treating the device. Because we rolled it out at 1 year level at a time, so we rolled it out to only year 3s in 2013. They knew it was very special because some of their older siblings in older years didn't have an iPad, but they had one in year 3. So they treated it well. Of course, we have guidelines about how kids should treat their iPad, and we've got rules and a user agreement that is very child friendly. It's not pages and pages, it's 1 page, very simple for the kids from year 3 to 6 to understand. So we found that the kids have really lived up to having their own iPad and what that involves. Sometimes we've had to, initially we give obviously practical advice to the parents about how's it going to travel to school, is there a drink bottle in the bag, does it need to have a life-proof case versus a very flimsy case. And we say to the parents, you know your child best, so if you think your child needs a life-proof case, they're a bit more expensive, but it's probably going to be worth it in the long run. Whereas some kids come to school and it's quite a thin case, and those parents obviously have a lot of trust in their child.
Did you have any breakage in the first year or anything, and how did that get managed, I suppose?
I don't think we had any breakage in the first year. We certainly had a few breakages over the time. I myself dropped one of the kids' iPads in year 6 2 years ago. They're always in the case, but we'd taken it out because the case wouldn't fit in a tripod we had at the school. Yeah. And I dropped it onto the basketball court, so the school covered that obviously because that was my fault. But generally, if we've had broken iPads, broken screens, it's because at home they've been broken. I can't, there would be 1 or 2 times maybe where something has happened at school where there's been a cracked screen. Generally, the kids at school are really good, and because I guess our philosophy here is if you're not using it at the space, it can never be left on the floor. Sometimes kids work on the floor, but it can never be left on the floor, so it's got to be on the table. And when they're finished using it, it always goes back in their tub. So there's not, they can't take it out at recess or lunch, so there's not those risk factors that other places may have. So because they've got a secure spot for it, that certainly helps having a storage tub for them.
So we've seen that the children have really accepted this and embraced it and become engaged. What was it like in that 2013 with other teachers, their curiosity about what was going on in your classroom?
Yeah.
How, can you tell us about that experience?
So I guess obviously we had gone to the staff and sort of seek some ideas and advice from them, myself, Leela, and the principal Tamara. And they were, generally they were really, I think in general, St Thomas is a pretty progressive school. We like to keep very up to date and ahead of what's happening. So I think there was certainly some trepidation and a bit of, probably more curiosity more than anything about how is this going to work when some of the staff, particularly some that had been teaching for a fair number of years, heard that there were going to be couches and cushions and wobbly stools and those kinds of things. I think a lot of them thought, what is this going to look like? I don't think there was negativity, it was just, how is this going to work in a classroom? How am I going to manage and control these kids in a classroom that looks like this, that's got these colours and that's got these wobbly stools, and where they can sit on wobbly stools and smaller stools and coffee tables. How's that going to work? So part of our plan, and we were quite deliberate in the way we rolled this whole thing out quite slowly, part of our plan was that we offered teachers the opportunity to come in and watch how I was teaching in the space. So whenever they had free time, or if they wanted to come in, other people could go into their class and take their class, just to watch how I was teaching in that space and how I used the space and how it was very, and in fact helped me to teach more than the old. We also offered up the Year 3 classroom when my class were things like sport or music in other classrooms. We offered other teachers the chance to use that space. So quite a few of the classes took up that opportunity to take their class up there for a maths lesson or a literacy block, just for them to see what it was like teaching in the space, knowing that they were going back to their sort of safe environment that they were used to for a long period of time. And yeah, quite a few teachers, especially the Year 4 and 5 teacher at the time, took up that opportunity whenever we were out. They would go down there. So much so that that Year 4 and 5 teacher, we hadn't budgeted any money for an upgrade of the Year 4 and 5 classrooms at that particular time. But they were really keen. They saw, again, I guess a 21st century classroom isn't necessarily about having the best brand new furniture. It's about how you work in that space and how you run that classroom. So these teachers wanted to start basically, so halfway through 2013, they saw that space in Year 3 was really working for managing the class and for doing what we believe best teaching looks like at St. Thomas. So they got rid of their desks as well, and they got trestle tables. So we had about 10, 15 trestle tables just in the storeroom, and they got the trestle tables out as like a collaborative space. So it wasn't as great as this particular setup that we're sitting at, because it was, the longer ones where, kids were still fairly apart. But it was the thought behind it that, okay, we've got rid of spaces for individual kids. It's a communal space, it's a collaborative space. And they even got, so the desks were got rid of, and they didn't have these nice storage containers, so they just used, those magazine holders, and every child had a magazine holder for the rest of that year that stored their equipment. They didn't have iPads at the time, so that was a bit more manageable. So those two teachers really were excited by what we were doing, and we were really heartened, myself and the leadership team were really heartened that they were taking that on board, even though they didn't have this nice fancy new stuff. So at the end of that year, we decided that we budgeted for rolling that out into Year 4 and 5, the contemporary space, which worked really well because those teachers just took it on board. They were already practicing using that space, and they made small little purchases, like small little IKEA coffee tables with what they could afford out of their class budget to try and replicate what we had done in Year 3. And then the following year, 2014, we had a Year 4 and 5 rollout of both iPad program and the contemporary spaces.
Yeah, because that was one of the questions I was interested in, is with the students who've gone from Year 3 with that collaborative teaching style to introduce, if they're going into Year 4 and you're going back into a traditional classroom.
Absolutely.
There's been that.
And that was something that the leadership, Tamara, the principal, and the leadership team certainly had to consider. Was at the end of Year 3, we knew they couldn't go back to having the traditional desks, and that was something that we knew wasn't going to happen, because it would essentially undo all the hard work, and we were trying to show our parent community this is what we believe is effective pedagogy in the classroom at the moment with this style of learning space. So to go backwards and put those kids back in a traditional space would have given mixed messages to our parents as well. So we made sure that we could roll out to those following years, and we made sure again that we put teachers in those 2 year levels who were capable and confident in delivering a one-to-one program with a contemporary learning space.
Did you ever find a teacher really putting their feet down, or did you have any teachers like that said, no, sorry, I can't take this kind of change? Or?
Yeah, so originally when when we rolled it out, so we rolled out 2013 to year 3, 2014 to 4 and 5, and then 2015 was the final rollout for us with our upper block to year 6. The year 6 teacher at the time was probably not really that into 21st century spaces, learning spaces. We purchased the furniture and this particular teacher wanted, we knew we were going to upgrade this particular classroom. This particular teacher wanted to go with just updated singular desks, essentially, just replicating what we had in this class before, but a newer desk. At that time, we were going through a leadership change of principals, and we had an interim principal, which made it a bit difficult at the time, because that's when we were looking at purchasing the furniture. So I sat down with that teacher, and essentially we just had a discussion that I understand that teacher wanted to have a certain style of classroom, but the beliefs of the school and the general beliefs of the staff of the school was that form of teaching was no longer as effective as what we were doing now. And also a discussion about this wasn't going to be that teacher's classroom forever. There quite possibly, at that time we had teachers had been in the classroom for about 3 or 4 years, so we knew that there was going to be a bit of a shuffle coming soon. So that was my discussion with that year 6 teacher, and they were accepting of that. And so together we sort of purchased what you see now, or the basics of what you see now. It's been added to over the last couple of years. That was difficult. So that teacher taught in here with this particular furniture, but didn't embrace the pedagogy behind it. So the kids still had a spot in the room with this brand new furniture. It wasn't about that collaborative style and kids moving in different places. That teacher decided they didn't want the wobbly stools, so we didn't get the wobbly stools for that particular year. But once I moved into year 6 the following year, we purchased everything else that needed to go with it. So that teacher decided that we were moving class anyway, and they moved on. That particular teacher moved on to another school. So right now we've got teachers in every classroom who are really supportive and confident with teaching in contemporary space, and agree that it fits what we're trying to build as a school.
It's become kind of like a culture, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think if we got rid of it, there would be a big uproar from the teachers, from the kids, and also from the parents. I think there'd be quite a big uproar, because it's sort of who we are. Yeah, you're right, it's who we are. It's the culture of the school. When you walk into any classroom, we've just done a science room, and there are similar style of classrooms. We had just big chunky tables in there, and we've just redone that to sort of fit in. That's sort of the last piece of the puzzle, I guess, to fit in with our philosophy and approach to contemporary spaces. Our year 1 and 2, I'm not sure if you're going to ask this later, sorry. Our year 1 and 2 classes initially there was furniture purchased about 3 or 4 years before we decided to do this. So they were stuck with what furniture they had. But in the shuffle of teachers, we actually had that teacher, Leela, who was the year 5 teacher, go down into year 2. So she took with her that knowledge and confidence in teaching in a contemporary space into year 2. So she brought in the couches in there, the coffee tables, and that way of thinking in there. And we also had our pre-primary teacher move up to year 1. And a lot of this is very similar, I guess, to how pre-primary classroom runs. They don't have their own space, they don't have a desk. It's just spaces for different learning opportunities. So she was great in taking that up to year 1 and incorporating things like coffee tables and light box tables and standing benches and all that kind of stuff. So essentially we had, pre-primary kids are very much like this anyway in their nature. So essentially, what was that, 2 years ago, we had basically a complete rollout after, say, 6 years, a complete rollout of contemporary spaces that we were really happy with as a school and really happy with as a staff.
And the library's been transformed as well?
Yeah, so our library, that was a project that we worked on in 2016, ready for the 2017 school year. So we've been talking about how our library, we're a single stream school, so our library was only used really 1 day a week. And it's a sort of newer part of the school. It's great. It had an IT lab in there, what was formerly an IT lab, with desktop computers in there. It had a huge space with a lot of books. So as a leadership team, we would talk at that point in time. I was assistant principal, and we were talking about how can we use, it was something that had been bothering me for a couple of years, and we just hadn't got around to doing anything with it. that space was being wasted, 4 days a week essentially. So we talked about what we could do, and we did a bit of research and came across this makerspace movement that was coming through quite a lot. So I did a bit of research and we talked about it, and went to the staff and said, look, what do you think about the library? Where do we see our library going in the future? What do we want our library to be, from 2017 onwards? Do we want it just to be a holder of books and that's it, or do we want more? And the staff, I think because we had been through this whole process, I guess I sort of went in thinking, there could be a few roadblocks here, but there were none. The only roadblocks were, let's just think about if kids are making stuff in there, where we can store it. It wasn't, it wasn't a roadblock, it was just things to consider that I hadn't considered before. So we went to the staff and said, look, this is what we're thinking, what are your ideas? Our library officer spoke, our science teacher and STEM sort of teacher spoke about makerspaces and what she saw. We brainstormed as a staff, and then we set up a little committee of about 5 or 6 teachers that were interested, and we transformed the space. We condensed the library, so we still got the same amount of books, we just put it into one half of the library. And then we built sort of like a little workshop area in the main makerspace area. And then our IT lab, we've removed the computers from there. It's a green screen room now. We've got access to Apple Mac laptops that they can take out, kids can take out, and teachers can take out if they want to use it. And we've got a whole lot of resources. So we're catering for digital technologies with our robotics and things like that, a space where teachers can go and have a big floor space to do their robotics. But also the design and technologies, knowing that was coming through as compulsory this year. We wanted a space and we wanted resources that teachers could go to without having to say, kids, can you bring in, 7 paper towel rolls and glue and all that kind of stuff. So now our makerspace, what was the IT lab, has 50 boxes of different materials, cardboards, plastics, bottles, you name it, we've got it in there, pipe cleaners, lucky bands. And now, so in the first term that we had the main space set up, I took the Year 6s in there, and our design and tech unit was to build a solar powered car. So they were building with any of the resources that were about. I gave them a little model solar panel and a little motor, and that was it. Essentially, it was an open-ended task: make a solar powered car that's going to beat the rest of the solar powered cars. And the kids were using everything that they could find in there and exploring, what materials would work best, how these cars work. We even had, jigsaw cutters. Kids were jigsaw cutting different things with power tools, heavily supervised, obviously, and sawing things. And some of the girls, in particular, were really proud of themselves and really excited that they were getting to do this because, for some of them, they might have thought it was traditionally, a male's thing to do. But some of the girls were really, the boys loved it too, but the girls really loved being able to use that jigsaw cutter and cut up some thick cardboard and use the saw and learn those skills that certainly I didn't learn as a kid and still don't have today, I guess, even.
You spoke earlier, at multiple times you've mentioned about parents. What engagement the parents had? Yeah, so we had with our initial rollout of one-to-one iPad classroom and matching this particular contemporary space with it, we had a parent night. We had 2 parent nights actually, informing parents this is what's going to happen with our one-to-one program, and we are matching it with this contemporary space because we believe this will best match the way that we, our pedagogy, what we believe is best pedagogy in the classroom. At that time, there was probably a bit more hesitance about the iPad program. There was a couple of parents who were worried about the kids having an iPad at that age and having an iPad at school, again, because there weren't many schools that had a one-to-one iPad program at that time, in that year. Certainly, I don't know of any Year 3 classrooms that had one at that time. There was a bit of hesitation about that. But with the space, parents were okay. In the initial, I don't think they fully knew what it was going to look like. We told them that there'd be couches and things like that, tried to show them some pictures, but I don't think they fully understood until they came in. And at the time, we had one of the parents coming into that class on staff as a teacher, a part-time teacher. And I remember I just set up the classroom in the holidays, those Christmas holidays, and she came in and she sort of had a bit of a horrified look on her face, and she said to me, "Where are all the kids going to sit?" And I thought, what have we done? This is going to be a disaster, essentially, if that's what one of our staff is saying as a parent. So I sort of explained, generally when I was teaching that previous year anyway, I didn't have all the kids at a desk at once anyway, because they're always doing different things.
So I said to the principal, we might have a bit of an issue here. And we said, we'll just see how it goes on that first day. Parents came in and they really liked it. They thought it was really fantastic. And the best thing that I did, which is sort of a bit of a tip for other people doing this, the best thing was to have parents in every day in the classroom to see how that space worked. So at the time in Year 3, I had a parent help at every literacy session, which was in the morning, I think, for an hour and a half. I had a parent every morning that was a parent helper that would work with a small group or a couple of kids. And in that, through the year, I cycled through most of the parents that would help out. And that was probably the best thing we did, because the parents saw it wasn't just a free-for-all with kids lying on couches and running to grab things. It was actually very structured, and the kids were using the space really well because we had taught them to use it really well. So the parents were spreading the good news, I guess, through word of mouth, not only with the contemporary space, but with the one-to-one program. The parents were spreading the good things that were happening in the classroom. And I guess that's how we got the good reputation in the wider school community, was that we had a lot of those parents evangelising for us, I guess, to all the other parents in the school. And so much so that when we did the rollout for the following year, I had quite a few parents from that year group say to me, if you want me to come and talk at the parent night for the iPads or the space, please let me know, because I'm happy to come and say how good it's been for my child or how I've seen it work. And for us, that was the best praise, I guess. There was no pat on the back or anything, but the best praise and feedback was parents saying to us, we will sell this program for you. You don't need to do it because we believe in it so heavily. That was really the best thing we did, was not make it really close so that parents are going, what's going on in there? We had open door policy, essentially, and that helps with the flow through onto following years.
Excellent. So, over that whole process of implementation, what would you say have been the highlights for you as a teacher?
I guess for me, as one of the few people that started this process, the journey that the school has taken, the teachers have taken to adopt this to where, some of the teachers that have been here the longest are now our most sort of vocal supporters of this space and love it the most. So for me, I guess, seeing how the school has rolled this out and staff have embraced it, and seeing a whole school now in this style is a really proud moment for us as a school, and for me, working in that very first classroom, back 5-6 years ago, seeing how the kids have adapted to it. For the kids now, this is just a space that they are used to. Every now and again, the kids will say, I went to my cousin's school, or they show them a picture of it, and they have the single desks. And the kids have become really proud of this space too. The kids have become really passionate about telling people why it works. And we, especially in those first few years, we had a lot of visitors come through to have a look at the space, and the kids were really, they were really good at it and really proud of. I said to them, if someone asks you a question, explain why you're working here. I didn't tell them to say it's really good. I said, you tell them if you like working in this space, where you'd like to work most. And they were really great ambassadors again for the program, because they were the ones telling the adults, I'm working here today because I feel like standing up because I've got a lot of energy, or I'm working on the couch because I'm doing an iPad project. I'm going to be here for a little while to get that kind of stuff done. And one of the great things, again, that has worked really well, and I'm really happy to see, is after those first couple of years, we gave some surveys, some electronic surveys to the parents about how they felt the one-to-one program and one-to-one iPad program and the contemporary space worked for their child. And we had an overwhelmingly positive response to that. Essentially, it was 100%. There were quite a few questions, but every parent in the class thought that this space helped their child to learn at varying degrees. Some strongly agreed, some just agreed. There was nobody that thought that this space was detrimental to their child. And with the iPad program, we had only one parent who thought that the iPad program was in year 3 was too young for their particular child. They didn't think their child at that age could handle having an iPad due to how much they wanted to be on it and play games on it. But the rest of the whatever it was, 30 group cohort was really positive. And we did a survey with the kids as well, and we had the same results. 100% obviously the kids loved using the iPads, but they were able to articulate why. It wasn't because we we do games on there because we very rarely do those drill games. It was all about what they're creating on there, the movies and that kind of stuff. And the other thing that was a funny one was the only kid that said that they didn't like this space. There was one child in that particular class, and the only reason he could give in that survey to me was because he couldn't make his own desk mat. And that was the only thing that was stopping him from loving the particular class. And that boy was the boy I was talking about who needed it the most, with his knees up and he's leaning across the table. And his mum certainly said these spaces were fantastic for him.
I suppose to summarise, if you had to take what you've done or what the school has done here and take it on school, I suppose also give advice to someone else if they're wanting the same kind of thing at their school. What would be the key takeouts, do you think, they would need to hit on to do that?
I've got some tips here in front of me just to remind me. I'm not going to read them all. One of the main tips that I would say would be you need to plan well ahead in advance. Like I was saying, we did 6 to 9 months of research and planning so that we knew we would be successful, or we gave ourselves the best shot at being successful. There are always factors that when it's actually rolled out, you can't control. So making sure that, we were really prepared, and we had more than one person doing it. So it wasn't just up to me to do it, or the principal. We had a small team that could meet and discuss these things and workshop how we were actually going to roll this out. Another tip would be to make sure whoever is going into that particular year level, whether it be with iPads or a contemporary space or both, make sure that, number one, they're confident in what they're going to be doing and they have the knowledge. And it's hard with expertise, because if you haven't taught in the space, you don't have the expertise. But at least you have that interest and you've read up about it, or you've visited schools and you've talked to people. There's plenty of people online on Twitter and things like that who have these spaces who are willing to give advice. Have somebody to go in there that's really confident, because the last thing you want is somebody that's not confident that does an average job or fumbles a bit, because if that's your first rollout year, that's when you're getting that negative feedback from parents, or students aren't really aware, or other teachers going, well, I don't see it working particularly well in there, why would I want to try that? So making sure you've got someone really confident, making sure you support that person, whether it's sending them to PD, sending them to schools like this to have a look at and chat with the teachers so that they've got that background. That leadership is really important, not just throwing them in and saying, okay, you go sort it out and we'll send the kids next year. And then another one would be my tip personally is to roll it out slowly. I think a lot of schools now who haven't started this process may be tempted to roll it out in year 4, 5, 6 all in the same year. My tip, and it certainly worked for us, is to roll it out slowly. Make sure you've got those key people who know how to do it properly. If it's a double stream school, roll it out in the 2 year 4 classes or 3 classes. Having somebody to talk to would be really beneficial. So for us, that wasn't possible because we're a single stream school, and we wanted to just do one class year level at a time. But for other schools, if you're double or triple, having that rollout where you've got a co-teacher to talk to and say, hey, how do you think we should set up this class? Or, hey, can you give me a few ideas? Or let's program this space for literacy and our small groups. That is another really big tip. The more, if you've got a small group of people that can talk to each other throughout that, especially throughout that first year, then you're going to have probably more success. So I was lucky here in that the teacher, Leela, was, even though she had her own class and her own things to teach, she was more than happy to sit down with me, and I could always bounce ideas off her about what I was doing and what we needed to do. So that's another tip. Johnny, I've got a couple more. One of them is to try and buy furniture, though the contemporary space is a lot about furniture, it's not just about the furniture, it's certainly about how you teach. Like I said about that previous year 6 teacher, they had all this great new furniture, but it wasn't being used like it was supposed to. So essentially you had wasted all of these thousands of dollars in that particular year. So my tip would be to buy furniture that's got multiple uses. So those storage tubs at the back that hold the kids' equipment, but also can be used as a stand-up table. Instead of having to buy another stand-up table, we could have had a couple more of those, which would have functioned as more stand-up tables. So multiple uses would be great. Think about the space that you're working in. So you don't want to clutter the space. I think there's a lot of temptation when you're buying new things that you want to buy a heap of stuff, but then it can often look really cluttered and cramped. You don't want that to happen. Depending on how many kids you've got to also feel that. But for us, we don't, for me anyway, and certainly for the teachers in school, we don't need a desk for every child for me, there's never a point where everybody's doing the exact same thing or writing at the same time. There's always, people can always be sitting on the couch or the coffee table or the back cushion area if they want to be. So you don't need, like we used to have, those kids that, a spot for every kid. And so I've got 32 kids in this class, which is, probably a bigger size class. But if you look around, it doesn't look full. It doesn't look like it's a packed class. When the kids are in here, it looks full because they're big Year 6 kids. But certainly, when there's 6 sitting up there, it certainly makes a difference to the space. Your furniture needs to be flexible, so depending on what we're doing, this furniture can be moved really easily to set up. So sometimes if I've got a 9 to 5, I might be working with half of the class or 2/3 of the class, I can set these tables up in a little U shape around the TV if I'm doing something explicit and I just want the last group, or a small group, to be working out the back doing something else. So you want furniture that's going to be flexible and you can move really quick. It doesn't take 10 minutes to move, it takes 2. These are on wheels, you just wheel them somewhere and it's, within 30 seconds you've essentially got a brand new classroom. Know your parent community, so know if this is something that you need to sort of start putting out really early and getting some, some schools might want to get a little parent committee going about some feedback about how it might be received and ideas. You've got to know the school, visit other schools and chat to people who've gone through the experience is a good tip. Getting rid of teacher desks is a really good tip. I know that's really hard for a lot of teachers. Our teachers here have got rid of all their teacher desks. The teacher desk in this room previously used to take up about 1/6 of the room, and that, in a small classroom like this, you just can't afford that space. So get rid of it. At our school, we believe we should be working with the kids anyway. If you need to do marking, we just sit at these tables when the kids are out of specialist subjects. With the rollout of the teachers, allow teachers the time to have a look at others. So when you've got that first class, start getting your next lot of teachers in to work in the space and to, practice teaching in the space before it rolls out to them so that you've got a successful rollout for the future. Teach the kids how to use the space. So kids will come in and they'll do what I said they'll do. They'll run for the couch every day for the first month to 2 months. So you need to teach the space. It's good if you have somebody that's a driver, somebody that has a real passion for it, that doesn't have to do all the work, but they certainly are the driver for it, and they're the one that pulls the team together and starts those meetings and presents new ideas to the group, or finds research, finds pictures, finds schools that they can present to the rest of the group. And my last two are that use your parents as advocates for the space. Have parents come in and experience those positive things in the space. And my last one is there's no one size sort of fits all approach to a contemporary space. If you go to, there are plenty of other schools doing a really fantastic job with one-to-one iPads and contemporary spaces. It's certainly not just us. But if you go to their schools, their contemporary spaces can look quite different. And it's about, as a staff, as a leadership team, as a community, what do you think is best going to suit the kids in your class? Because if you just copy somebody else, that may not be best for kids in your class. You know your students best. At St. Thomas, we know our students best. This is what we've created. So know your students, know your community best. They're essentially my tips.
They were a very comprehensive range of tips on really fantastic way through those. So quickly. In conclusion, are there any questions we got from the floors? Any other questions that have come through? You actually did cover about 4 of them just in that last field. So I think you've got some psychic abilities on there. So look, we'll close this off. You've been a fantastic wealth of knowledge there, Ryan. And we've not had to actually stop and ask you too many questions because it's been fantastic. You've really enriched us and given us a great insight into how your classroom works, and also the journey that's been undertaken by St. Thomas. So well done, and thank you very much for having us here and giving us the time there to in your classroom and hear these experiences.
Thanks for having me.
And again, thank you very much.